write the lyrics to change the game. Nothing's ever gonna be the same. It's the verse effect. It's just the verse effect. It's the verse effect. It's the verse effect. It's the verse effect. I write the lyrics to change the game. Nothing's ever gonna be the same.
Welcome to the Verse Effect, lyrics that changed the game. I am Camille, and we analyze and discuss groundbreaking rap and hip-hop song lyrics. Today we are discussing Sucker MCs by Run-D.M.C.
And I'm Roderick. All right, so let's just start with that line. 2 years ago, a friend of mine asked me to say some MC rhymes. It's simple, but man, it kind of sets the tone, right? Like, it's not just saying, hey, we're here to rap. It's positioning this whole journey as something a little momentous, like it's rooted in memory, in time.
Exactly. It's interesting because by framing it as an invitation, it raises this question of performance and intention. You know, why are they doing this? It's not just for the crowd or the glory, it's because someone asked them to, almost pulling the artistry out of them. That immediacy of purpose is really compelling.
Yeah, and when you put it in the context of Run-D.M.C's rise, right? Hip-hop at the time was still kind of proving itself as an art form. So these lines, they're almost staking their claim. Like, this is who I am, I've been doing this. It's got this confidence, but it's subtle.
Subtle, but also setting a narrative. It's not just rapping for the sake of rapping, it's storytelling. And that really points to a shift in where hip-hop was headed. We're moving beyond party anthems into personal and collective memory. It ties the MC to a larger narrative of community and culture.
Yeah, it's not just bars for fun. It's like they're saying, this is something authentic and it's tied to my life. And the cadence, man, the way DMC delivers it, it's so direct. There's no fluff, no overproduction. It's just raw. And raw was what hip-hop needed right then, in the early 80s.
And speaking of the early 80s, that delivery, it reflects the realities of New York at the time. The stripped-down sound corresponded to stripped-down lives. This wasn't luxury rap, it was survival rap. And what's fascinating is how they made that minimalist vibe feel so revolutionary. I mean, the line itself isn't overly complex, but it's weighted, you can feel it.
For sure, it carries weight, like, without needing to be big lyrically. And I know, it's a perfect example of how Run-D.M.C carved out their space. 2 years ago makes it clear they've got history, even if the world's just waking up to them.
And that idea of staking a claim, of planting roots through lyrical history, it carries right into the next line. I'm DMC in the place to be. I go to St. John's University. It's deceptively simple, but it anchors the narrative further. There's this subtle duality, grounded and personal on one hand, yet boldly declarative on the other. It's like he's saying, here's where I'm from, and here's why it matters.
Right, and just him shouting out St. John's. It's not just name-dropping. It's mapping himself onto the landscape of New York, you know? St. John's is Queens. DMC is Queens. And by doing that, he's kind of saying, this is where my story begins. There's a pride in it, but also an accessibility, a human touch.
Correct. It's not just about repping a place, it's claiming an identity that's both academic and urban. And in 1984, think about how rare that was in hip-hop. To highlight both education and street life in the same breath, that wasn't the imagery most people associated with the genre back then.
That is so true. It's like he's breaking stereotypes while keeping it real. And what I love is how it's so unpolished in delivery. Like, this is me, take it or leave it. That's hip-hop energy at its purest. And it's
storytelling.
Exactly. It's storytelling that doesn't hide behind metaphors. He's introducing himself as a person, not just a persona. And think about how that resonated. Back then, hip-hop was all about braggadocio, right? But DMC is like subtly changing that format. He's not just boasting, he's reflecting.
And that reflection humanizes him. He's not larger than life, he's tangible, relatable. To your point earlier, it's rooted in place and time. The place to be isn't just any stage. It's whatever stage he's made his own, from Queens to the classroom to, eventually, the world.
And there's something profound in the simplicity of that line. He's not over-explaining himself, not trying to sound overly complex. He's just embodying who he is. And in a genre that's still finding its voice in the mainstream, at this time, That kind of authenticity, it's powerful. All right, and then we get to, I got a big long caddy, not like a Seville. Right away, the storytelling continues. This isn't just about status or luxury. It's about distinction, about saying, this is what sets me apart. That specificity is a part of his identity, mapped out as clearly as his queen's roots earlier.
Exactly. There's this deeper assertion happening with that line. It's about defining their taste and their identity. A Seville? That's what? That's a little compact, a little understated compared to a long Cadillac, which was such an iconic symbol of success and style, particularly in Black communities.
Right? And it's not just about possession. It's about choosing what represents you. I mean, think of the caddy. It's long, bold, flashy. That's a statement car. You pull up in that, everybody knows you've arrived. A Seville? I mean, yeah, it's cool, but it doesn't say the same thing. And in hip-hop, every detail matters. It's all intentional.
And what's fascinating is how that intentionality intersects with the minimalist delivery of the lyrics. They don't need to over-elaborate. Just the mention of the Cadillac evokes this entire world: wealth, mobility, freedom. It fits into the larger cultural narrative of hip-hop as a form of upward expression.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not just a flex about having the car itself. It's about saying, I'm here, but I'm also choosing how I show up. And considering the time, man, early 80s, the Caddy was already legendary. It was more than a car. It was status and respect all in one ride. So they're tapping into a deep cultural symbol.
Absolutely. The Cadillac was practically aspirational, but it wasn't unattainable, which makes it even more powerful. It's rooted in something real, a tangible symbol of success people could actually aspire to. And that humility, paired with ambition, is part of what made Run-D.M.C feel so grounded.
Right. That's why it resonates. It's not just about bragging. It's saying, this is where I'm at, and I'm proud of it. And while materialism might be the surface layer, beneath that, it's really about claiming agency. This is my version of success, and I'm going to own it.
And it's so tied to identity. The Cadillac becomes an extension of their persona: bold, confident, unapologetic. What I find interesting is how this line contrasts with the rest of the song. It's almost a moment of stillness, less about challenging others and more about self-definition.
For sure. Here's another thing. It's not overproduced, right? That raw delivery. A single line like this just hangs in the air, and it's all you need. It stands out because it's simple but iconic, and I think that's exactly what Run-D.M.C was all about. Okay, now, shifting gears a bit, but staying with that theme of identity and bold declarations, we have to dive into this. I'm the king of rock. There is none higher. Sucker MCs should call me sire. That is a proclamation, right there. It's bold, it demands attention, and it's setting up a whole narrative straight out the gate.
It's not just bold, it's revolutionary. Calling yourself the king of rock in 1984, when the mainstream still didn't fully embrace hip-hop as legitimate, that's a giant statement. It's staking a claim to an art form they were building into its own throne.
Right, and it's hip-hop wasn't just challenging the music scene, they were reinventing it. And Run-D.M.C's whole sound was so stripped down, but this line, it's larger than life almost. It's like it's towering over everything else. There is none higher. You can't compete with that kind of confidence.
Exactly. There's a myth-making quality to it, but it's grounded in their reality. By claiming the title of king, they're positioning themselves not just as rappers, but cultural leaders. It's not a boast for the sake of ego. It's about authority and respect.
Yeah. And let's not forget, they're fusing hip-hop with elements of rock. That heavy beat-driven production, the guitar samples. They're literally saying, we're kings of this new fusion. We've taken it and made it ours.
Right. And that's part of what sets them apart. They're not just occupying a space, they're redefining it. They're taking guitar riffs, which were traditionally identified with white rock culture, and transforming them into something uniquely Black and revolutionary.
Exactly. They weren't just crossing lines, they were erasing them. And honestly, this line captures that audacity beautifully. It's It's cheeky almost. Sucker MCs should call me sire. That's like,
It's a power move.
totally. It's playful, but it's laying down the law. They're saying, we're not just good at this, we're setting the standard, and everybody else, you're basically playing catch up.
And it's important to note that, at the time, this kind of direct challenge was radical. Hip hop thrived on competition, sure, but Run-D.M.C elevated that into an art form. They weren't just battling one on one, they were battling the entire status quo.
Right. And you can hear it in the delivery. No fluff, no filler. Just raw, powerful words that hit like a drum beat. And I think that's what makes this line so iconic. They weren't just here to participate, they were here to dominate. And speaking of laying down the law, how about this line? Because the rhymes I say, sharp as a nail, witty as can be, and not for sale. I mean, that's pure precision. It's not just about proving skill. It's a declaration of independence, of being untouchable.
Absolutely. And what strikes me immediately is that witty isn't just about the cleverness of the rhymes, it's about precision. Like a nail, right? It's something that sticks. But then, not for sale? That's such a bold stance in an industry where commercialism was becoming more dominant.
Yeah, it's this refusal to compromise their authenticity. They're saying, our words, our artistry, that's ours, and you can't buy that. And in a moment where hip-hop was just starting to get attention from major labels, that line, it's like drawing a line in the sand.
Right. And it introduces a deeper existential question for artists. What does it mean to hold on to your creativity, your originality, when you're navigating a system that's constantly trying to commodify culture? Run-D.M.C is staking a claim here. They're saying, we're sharp, we're clever, but we're not selling out.
Exactly. And you feel that sharpness not just in what they're saying, but in how they're delivering it. The minimalist beat, the directness, it's like they're stripping everything back to just let those words hit. No distractions, no fluff. It's like pure essence.
And it works because of what it rejects. They don't, they're not leaning into flamboyant metaphors here or overcomplicating it. They're witty, but they're also straightforward. And so much of hip-hop at the time was still rooted in proving skill and relevance. But Run-D.M.C doesn't need to prove. They just state it, boldly and with such elegance in their simplicity.
Totally. And honestly, that whole not for sale part, that feels bigger than just Run-D.M.C. Like, it feels emblematic of hip-hop as a culture at that time. It's protecting an identity. And yeah, commercialization would eventually creep in, but this line, it's fighting back. It's keeping the foundation intact.
It really amplifies this idea of hip-hop as a grassroots movement, as a voice of resistance. Run-D.M.C may have been gaining success, but they weren't about to let the allure of that success compromise the integrity of their craft. This line is a reminder that originality is their currency, and that can't be bought.
And I think that's what made these guys such game changers. There's power in that restraint, Like, they didn't need $1 million beat or a flashy gimmick to make their point. That pared down style, it forced you to zero in on the words, on the message, and they made sure it stuck with you.
Precisely. And that approach, remaining sharp and deliberate, it became their signature. Lines like this, almost deceptively simple, carry layers of meaning. Each word feels intentional, like every single syllable is pulling its weight.
And that's why this track is legendary. It's not just a song, it's like a manifesto. They're saying, this is who we are. This is what hip-hop means to us. And if you can't meet that standard, well,
maybe you're the sucker MC they're talking about.
So taking that manifesto-like spirit they brought to their work, Sucker MCs stands out as a definitive turning point. With its minimalist beat and razor-sharp delivery, it strips hip-hop down to its raw essence, making their message impossible to ignore.
Absolutely. And that rawness was important because it matched the cultural moment, right? It wasn't trying to be something polished or overly produced. It felt real, like it reflected the streets, the struggles, the authenticity of the time.
Right? And it wasn't just about the sound. The lyrics, man, they set a tone. Self-promotion, competition, that whole idea of defining yourself through your words, that's hip-hop DNA. It's You know, it's foundational.
Exactly. And that's what stands out to me, the authenticity. Sucker MCs didn't just introduce a sound, it introduced an ethos. It said, this is who we are, this is what we stand for, and it dared others to rise to that level, or, well, be called out.
Yeah, and it wasn't subtle about it either, but that's what made it so powerful. It didn't have to be. It gave artists this roadmap. Be bold, be yourself, and back it up with skill. And if you couldn't do that, man, you better rethink calling yourself an MC.
That combination of simplicity and confidence, it's like a blueprint for battle rap, isn't it? The competitive edge, the sharpness of their lines, it became the language of hip-hop culture. And even now, decades later, you can hear that DNA in so much of what came after.
Exactly. It's not just a song, it's a milestone. It announced that hip-hop was here not just to entertain, but to challenge, to redefine the music industry, and honestly, to rewrite cultural narratives. It said, this is ours, and this is how we'll tell our story.
And what's so incredible is how that story resonated. Sucker MCs wasn't just about Run-D.M.C staking their claim. It gave a voice to a movement, one that's still evolving. It's a legacy that runs through every corner of hip-hop today.
No doubt about that. It's a reminder that sometimes less is more. Strip it back to the core, keep it real, and let your voice carry the weight. Run-D.M.C taught us that, and we're still learning from it.
And on that note, thanks for taking this journey with us. There's so much depth to uncover in these tracks and these moments in hip-hop history. It's been a privilege to explore it together.
Absolutely. Until next time, stay true to yourselves and the music you love. See you soon.
It's the verse effect, it's the verse effect. I write the lyrics that change the game. Nothing's ever gonna be the same. Nothing's ever gonna be the same. I write the lyrics that change the game. Nothing's ever gonna be the same. Nothing's ever gonna be the same.